Look, nobody tells you that applying to the Galactic Safety Academy is going to be the bureaucratic equivalent of a root canal performed by a dyslexic dentist. But here we are. Jake Torres sat in Examination Hall 7 of the Kepler-9 orbital station, surrounded by approximately 200 aspiring safety inspectors from across the known galaxy. To his left, a Vrelian with skin like wet cement nervously tapped 3 of its 7 fingers on the desk. To his right, a crystalline Shardian hummed at a frequency that made Jake's dental fillings vibrate. Directly in front of him, a gelatinous bloboid rippled with what Jake had learned to recognize as concentration, or possibly indigestion. Hard to tell with bloboids. The examination packet sat on his desk, sealed with one of those tamper-proof holographic strips that the galaxy seemed to think were impressive. Jake had seen better security on a bag of chips. "You may begin," announced Administrator Krill from the front of the hall. She was Zentari, which meant she had 4 eyes, 2 mouths, and the personality of a tax audit. Her primary eyes scanned the room while her secondary eyes read from her datapad, a multitasking flex that Jake might have found impressive if she wasn't currently making him sit through standardized testing like he was back in high school. Jake broke the seal and flipped open the packet. Standard stuff, really. Question 1. Identify the proper protocols for handling a Class 3 contamination event. Question 2. List the 4 pillars of galactic safety standards. Question 15. Explain the difference between hazardous and extremely hazardous materials using no fewer than 3 cited examples. He worked through the exam with the kind of methodical boredom that comes from being naturally good at something you don't particularly care about. Around him, various aliens employed their species-specific test-taking strategies. The Vrelian was sweating some kind of orange fluid. The Shardians' hum had gone up half an octave. The bloboid had developed a corner that looked distinctly anxious. Then Jake hit question 47. Name 1 substance toxic to carbon-based life forms. 1 substance. Jake's pen hovered over the paper as his brain, unhelpfully, began cataloging his kitchen back on Earth. The kitchen he'd left just 3 weeks ago. The kitchen that was, apparently, a weapons cache masquerading as a place to make breakfast. Should he go with the obvious answer? Something like arsenic or cyanide? That's what a normal person would do. That's what everyone else in this room was probably doing right now. But Jake's brain had already started the list, and trying to stop it now would be like trying to stop a sneeze halfway through. Uncomfortable, and ultimately pointless. He started writing, chocolate. That was the first one Jake wrote down, because it seemed like a good place to start. Theobromine, toxic to most species, fatal to quite a few. Humans had just developed a convenient immunity and decided to make dessert out of it, as one does. Then caffeine, because if they were talking about kitchen toxins, coffee deserved a mention. Neurotoxin, technically. Humans consumed it to wake up. The irony was not lost on Jake. Nutmeg. People always forgot about nutmeg. Myristicin poisoning was a thing. A weird thing, but still a thing. Raw kidney beans. Phytohemagglutinin. Jake had actually gotten sick from those once after undercooking them in a slow cooker. That had been a fun weekend. He was on number 7, apple seeds, when he noticed the Vrelian next to him had already closed his packet and was sitting back with the relieved expression of someone who had just finished a difficult task. Jake glanced around. The Shardian was sealing her packet too. Across the aisle, the bloboid rippled in what was definitely relief this time and oozed its way to the submission desk at the front. Jake kept writing. Rhubarb leaves. Cherry pits. Apricot kernels. Elderberries if you ate them wrong. Potatoes if you let them go green. Tomato leaves. Cassava if you skipped a step in preparation. Examinee, came Administrator Krill's voice from somewhere above him. Jake looked up to find all 4 of her eyes focused on him with the intensity of someone who had just noticed a problem. Are you experiencing difficulty with the examination? No, ma'am, Jake said. Just being thorough. The question asks for 1 substance. Yes, ma'am. You appear to be writing considerably more than 1 substance. Yes, ma'am. 2 of Krill's eyes narrowed. The other 2 stayed wide. Jake had no idea what that meant in Zentari body language, but he was going to guess it wasn't great. Proceed, she said finally, in the tone of someone who was already planning the disciplinary paperwork. Jake proceeded. Bitter almonds, castor beans, foxglove, oleander, azaleas, daffodil bulbs, wisteria seeds, mistletoe berries, holly berries, poinsettia sap. He was vaguely aware that a small crowd had formed near his desk. The Vrelian had returned from submitting his exam and was now staring at Jake's paper with an expression that might have been horror. Hard to tell with Vrelians. Mushrooms got their own section. Death cap, destroying angel, false morel, autumn skullcap. Jake had a brief moment of wondering if he should count each mushroom separately, but decided that seemed like overkill. He was trying to pass an exam, not write a field guide. Raw honey, he wrote, for infants specifically. Botulism spores. Most adults were fine with it. Human infants, not so much. Weird species, humans. Fava beans for people with G6PD deficiency. Starfruit for anyone with kidney problems. Grapefruit if you were on the wrong medication. His hand was starting to cramp. Undercooked pork. Undercooked chicken. Raw eggs. Unpasteurized milk. Basically, Jake realized, humans had looked at food poisoning and said, we'll eat it anyway, just gotta cook it right. This probably said something philosophical about humanity. But Jake was too busy writing to figure out what. Lima beans. Another lectin situation. Ackee fruit if you picked it wrong. Hakarl, which was fermented shark that was apparently toxic if you didn't ferment it correctly. Jake had never understood why anyone would ferment a shark in the first place, but Iceland seemed pretty committed to the bit. He added monosodium glutamate with an asterisk, noting that toxicity was disputed but sensitivity was real. Salt in excessive quantities. Sugar in excessive quantities. Water in excessive quantities, technically, though you had to really commit to water poisoning. Jake numbered the last entry. 47. 47 toxic substances, all of which had been in his kitchen at one point or another. Well, not the fermented shark, but everything else, yeah. He closed his packet and stood up. Every single being in Examination Hall 7 was staring at him. Submitting, Jake said, and walked his exam to Administrator Krill's desk. She took it with 2 hands, and 2 of her mouths pressed into thin lines. This, Jake thought, is probably going to be a situation. Administrator Krill's primary eyes scanned the first page of Jake's exam, then her secondary eyes joined in. Then both of her mouths opened slightly, which Jake had learned was the Zentari equivalent of a jaw drop. This is, she said slowly, highly irregular. The question said, name one poison. Jake offered. I named several. I figured more information was better than less. You named 47. Yes, ma'am. From your kitchen. Yes, ma'am. Krill's upper mouth made a flay, clicking sound. Her lower mouth seemed to be trying to form words, and failing. Finally, she pressed a button on her datapad. Security to Examination Hall 7. Also, send Head Inspector Dramix. Immediately. That seemed excessive, but Jake had learned not to argue with administrators. He stood there while the other examinees filed out, each one giving him a tang, wide berth, like he might be contagious. The Vrelian actually shuddered as he passed. The blowboid moved faster than Jake had ever seen a blowboid move. Head Safety Inspector Dramix arrived 7 minutes later, which was pretty fast considering the station's size. He was Quillaxian, which meant he looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, given it opposable thumbs, and cursed it with anxiety. His antennae twitched constantly. What's the emergency? Dramix asked, his translator rendering his voice in a pitch that suggested he was already having a bad day. Krill handed him Jake's exam without a word. Dramix read the first page. His antennae stopped twitching, then they started twitching twice as fast. This can't be accurate, he said. That's what we need to verify. Krill replied. It's accurate, Jake said. I can explain each one if you want. Please don't, Dramix said quickly. Then, actually, yes, start with number 1, chocolate. You're claiming chocolate is toxic? Theobromine, Jake said. It's toxic to most carbon-based life forms. Humans metabolize it slowly enough that we're fine. Dogs, not so much. Kills them pretty reliably. We still keep it around because, you know, it tastes good. Dramix made a note on his datapad. A long note. And caffeine? Neurotoxin. We drink it every morning, sometimes multiple times. It makes us feel awake and productive. You consume neurotoxins for productivity. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. Dramix's antennae were now moving in patterns that Jake was pretty sure spelled out distress in some kind of insect Morse code. Number 4. Raw kidney beans. Oh yeah, those'll mess you up, Jake said. Phytohemagglutinin. You have to boil them hard for at least 10 minutes to break down the toxin. I made the mistake of using a slow cooker once. Didn't boil them hot enough. Spent a weekend regretting every life choice that led to that moment. You're telling me, Dramix said slowly, that you have to carefully prepare these beans or they'll poison you, and humans just, what, keep them in their homes? In our pantries, usually. Sometimes in decorative jars. My aunt has some in a mason jar with a little ribbon on it. Krill had pulled up a galactic database on her terminal. Jake could see her cross-referencing his list. Every few seconds, One of her mouths would make a small noise of distress. Apple seeds, she read. Cyanogenic glycosides. Confirmed, toxic. Cherry pits, same thing. Jake added helpfully. Though you'd have to eat a lot of them. We mostly just tell kids not to swallow them and call it good. Rhubarb leaves, oxalic acid. Confirmed. Krill's voice had gone flat. Potato skin when green. Solanine. Confirmed. Tomato leaves. Also solanine. Confirmed. Nightshade family, Jake explained. We domesticated them anyway, put them on pizza. Humans are really into pizza. Dramix sat down heavily in a chair that squeaked under his chitinous frame. Cassava. You wrote, if prepared incorrectly. What does that mean? You have to soak it and cook it properly or it converts to cyanide in your stomach. It's a staple food in a lot of places on Earth. People get pretty good at preparing it. Mostly. Mostly? I mean, there are incidents, but that's true of everything. It should not be true of food. Dramix's antennae had achieved what Jake could only describe as a vibration. Food should not have incidents. Number 17. Krill continued in a monotone. Raw honey for human infants. Botulism spores. She looked up at Jake. You give this to your children? Only after age 1. Before that, their digestive systems can't handle it. After that, they're fine. We put it in tea. Tea. The caffeine neurotoxin delivery system. Exactly. Dramix had his face in his hands. Well, his manipulator appendages. How are you alive? How is your species alive? Natural selection, mostly, Jake said. The people who ate the wrong mushrooms didn't pass on their genes. Eventually, we got pretty good at remembering which things killed us. Which brings me to section 3 of your list, Krill said. Mushrooms. You listed 6 species of toxic mushrooms. Could have listed more, Jake admitted. But I tried to stick to ones I'd actually seen in markets or growing near my house. The silence that followed that statement was the kind of silence that has weight to it. Growing, Dramix repeated. Near your house. Yeah, death caps grow in the park down the street. We just, don't eat them. There are signs and everything. Krill closed her eyes. All 4 of them. I need to call the Galactic Council. Is that really necessary? Jake asked. You've just informed us that Earth is essentially a minefield of toxic substances that your species casually consumes, stores in decorative jars, and allows to grow in recreational areas. Yes, it's necessary. The verification process took 3 hours. 3 very long hours during which Jake sat in a conference room that smelled faintly of recycled air and panic while Administrator Krill and Head Inspector Dramix systematically destroyed their own peace of mind. They'd pulled up the Galactic Toxicology database on the main screen, a massive compilation of every known poison, toxin, and hazardous substance documented across 473 member species. It was color-coded. Jake was starting to realize that the red entries were bad. His list was turning the screen into a crimson light show. Item 7, Krill read, her voice having long since passed through distress and landed in a kind of hollow acceptance. Apple seeds. Verification status, confirmed. Toxicity level, moderate to severe. Active compound, amygdalin, metabolizes to hydrogen cyanide. Recommended handling, level 3 hazmat protocols. She looked at Jake. You eat around these? We eat apples all the time, Jake said. The seeds are inside. You just don't chew them. Kids learn this pretty early. Your method of poison prevention is telling children not to chew? It works surprisingly well. Dramix had moved on to number 14. His antennae had given up their frantic movement and now just drooped. Castor beans. Ricin. This is let me read this correctly, a Class 1 restricted biotoxin. 1 seed can kill a full-grown Thaxian. Thaxians weigh 400 kilograms. Yeah, ricin is no joke, Jake agreed. But the plants are pretty. Some people grow them ornamentally. Ornamentally. In gardens. For decoration. You decorate with assassination material. When you say it like that, how else should I say it? Dramix's voice had gone up an octave. How else is there to say it? Jake decided silence was probably his best option at this point. Krill had continued down the list without waiting. Raw kidney beans. Phytohemagglutinin. Confirmed. As few as 4 raw beans can cause severe illness in humans. 5 to 6 can be fatal. She paused. You mentioned you cooked these incorrectly once. In a slow cooker. Yeah, that was a rough weekend. You nearly died from meal preparation. I mean, I don't think I was going to die. Just felt like it. There's a difference. Is there? Though. Krill's secondary eyes focused on him, while her primary eyes stayed on the screen. Is there really? The database had helpfully started generating statistics. Apparently, of the 47 substances Jake had listed, 32 were classified as restricted materials requiring special handling permits in most of galactic space. 8 were outright banned for civilian possession. 3 were considered weapons-grade toxins. And all of them were, according to Jake, just hanging out in kitchens across Earth. Number 23. Dramix said weakly. Nutmeg. You wrote toxic in large amounts. How large? 2 whole nutmegs, ground up, will cause hallucinations and organ damage. But you'd have to really commit to eating that much nutmeg. It doesn't taste good in those quantities. So, the limiting factor is flavor? Pretty much. Not safety protocols. Not handling procedures. Flavor. Humans are weird about spices, Jake offered. We used to sail across oceans and start wars over them. Getting a little poisoned was just part of the experience. Krill had reached the mushroom section. She read each entry in silence, her faces growing progressively more drawn. Death cap mushroom. Amatoxins. 80% fatality rate, even with treatment. Destroying angel mushroom. Same toxin family. False morel. Gyrometrin metabolizes to monomethylhydrazine. Which is, and I'm reading this correctly, rocket fuel. Yeah, that one's wild, Jake said. Some people still eat them if you boil them a bunch of times and throw out the water. I don't, for the record. That seems like too much work to risk rocket fuel poisoning. A measured response, Krill said dryly. Dramix had pulled up a separate screen and was now looking at Earth's agricultural data. His antennae had started trembling. According to this, you export chocolate. You sell the theobromine toxin to other species. It's popular, Jake said. People like it. We put warning labels on it. Warning labels. Yeah, toxic to most species, consume at own risk, that kind of thing. It's fine. Nobody's forced to buy it. Item 31. Krill continued with the determination of someone who had started this nightmare and was going to finish it. Raw eggs. Salmonella risk. Confirmed. She looked up. You eat these raw? Some people do. In protein shakes, mostly. Or cookie dough. Technically, you're not supposed to, but people do anyway. Cookie dough. It's a dessert. You bake it, usually. But sometimes you just eat the dough raw because it tastes good and you're willing to gamble on the salmonella. Your desserts are a gamble. Only if you're impatient. Dramix made the sound that his translator couldn't quite render. It came out as static. Number 37. Lima beans. Another. Lectin toxin. Must be cooked properly or causes severe gastric distress. You people have multiple beans that are trying to kill you. Beans are tricky, Jake acknowledged. But they're cheap and nutritious, so we figured out how to prepare them. Trial and error. Mostly error at first. How much error are we talking about? I mean, people definitely died. But that was a long time ago. We've got it down now. Mostly. Mostly. You keep saying mostly. Well, sometimes people still mess up. Use a slow cooker when they should boil. Skip steps. Read the recipe wrong. But that's on them, really. Krill had reached the end of the list. She sat back in her chair, all 4 eyes closed. Number 47. Fugu preparation techniques. This one just says, ask me if you want details. Oh yeah. Jake brightened. That's blowfish. It's a delicacy in Japan. The liver and organs contain tetrodotoxin, which is lethal. Chefs train for years to prepare it correctly. You need a special license. It's this whole thing. You require a license to prepare fish. Just the poisonous ones. Just the poisonous ones. Krill opened her eyes and looked at Dramix. Call the council. All of them. Emergency session. Already did, Dramix said. They're convening in 20 minutes. They want the human present. Great, Jake said. I've always wanted to see the Galactic Council chambers. You've weaponized breakfast, Dramix said flatly. You've turned food storage into a hazmat situation. Your kitchens require safety briefings. I mean, not really. You just have to know what you're doing. That's what safety briefings are for. The conference room door opened, and a Zentari security officer gestured to Jake. The council is ready for you. Jake stood up. Should I be worried? You've just revealed that your species casually handles enough toxins to violate 16 different galactic safety treaties. Krill said. You tell me. Yeah, but those treaties are for weapons and stuff. This is just food. Krill and Dramix looked at each other. Then they looked back at Jake. "That's what worries us," they said in unison. The Galactic Council chambers were impressive in that way, that large governmental spaces always are. All vaulted ceilings and architectural choices designed to make individuals feel small and appropriately intimidated. It wasn't working on Jake, mostly because he was too busy wondering if he was going to get expelled before he even started at the academy. The council consisted of 17 species representatives, arranged in a semicircle of elevated platforms. That would have looked dramatic if half of them weren't currently radiating visible distress. The Vrelian counselor was sweating that orange fluid again. The Quilaxian representative had antennae that were practically tied in knots. Even the crystalline Shardian, who didn't technically have a nervous system, was vibrating at a frequency that suggested deep concern. At the center podium stood High Chancellor Vess, a Draknari with scales that shifted colors based on mood. Right now, they were cycling through shades of orange and red that Jake was pretty sure meant alarm and confusion. "Not great. Jake Torres of Earth," Vess began, his voice amplified through the chamber's acoustics. "You have caused quite the situation." "Wasn't really trying to, sir," Jake said. "Just answered the exam question." "Yes. The question that asked for 1 poison, to which you provided 47. The question didn't specify a maximum number. A ripple of what might have been laughter or horror ran through the council. Hard to tell with that many species in one room. "Let's address the primary concern," Vess continued. "Your list has been verified by our toxicology experts. Every substance you named is confirmed toxic to various degrees. All of these substances are, according to your testimony, commonly found in human residences. Is this accurate?" "Yes, sir." "And humans consume many of these substances regularly?" "Yes, sir. Despite knowing they're toxic." "Well, they're only toxic if you prepare them wrong. Or eat too much. Or have a specific medical condition. Or you're a different species." Jake paused. "It's contextual." Counselor Thress, a blowboid who served as the representative for collective species, rippled forward. Their translator rendered their burbling as, "The human claims poisoning is contextual. This is not how toxicology works." "It's how it works on Earth," Jake said. "Look, chocolate is only toxic if you're not human. Or if you're a human baby. Or a dog. But adult, humans are fine with it. Same with caffeine. We built our entire morning routine around consuming it." "Your morning routine is based on neurotoxin consumption," stated Counselor Ixaric, a mantis-like Thrixian. "This seems maladaptive." "It seems necessary," Jake countered. "Have you ever tried to work an 8-hour shift without coffee? It's bleak." High Chancellor Vess's scales flickered to a deep purple that Jake suspected meant he was developing a headache. "Let's move on to the more concerning items. You listed castor beans. Plants containing ricin, a substance so lethal that 3-member civilizations have banned it from their star systems entirely." "Right. But we don't eat those," Jake said. "We just grow them. They're pretty. You cultivate weapons-grade biotoxins for aesthetic purposes. I mean, the plants are nice. Red leaves, interesting texture. Really adds something to a garden bed." The Vrelian counselor made a choking sound. "This is insane. Your species is insane." "Okay, that's a little harsh," Jake said. "Look, I get that it sounds bad, but context matters. Yes, we have toxic stuff around. But we've also been living with this toxic stuff for thousands of years. We know how to handle it. We teach our kids what not to eat. We've developed preparation methods. We've got systems." "Systems," repeated Counselor Thress. "Your system for ricin is don't eat the decorative plant. It works. That's not a system, that's a suggestion. A suggestion that everyone follows," Jake pointed out. "When was the last time you heard about a mass castor bean poisoning?" "Exactly. Never. Because we know not to eat them." Administrator Krill, who had been standing to the side with Dramix, stepped forward. "If I may, High Chancellor. The issue extends beyond the human's kitchen. We've been reviewing Earth's exports. They're currently trading chocolate, coffee, and various nightshade-based products to over 40 member worlds. With warning labels," Jake interjected. "Warning labels that many species apparently ignore because they assume anything marketed as food must be safe. That's on them for not reading the label. You put poison on the market. It's only poison to some species. To us, it's just food." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, translators struggling to keep up with 17 different species, all trying to express variations of concern, outrage, and existential dread. High Chancellor Vess had to pulse his scales through a bright yellow, which apparently meant shut up in Draknari, before order was restored. This is unprecedented, Vess said once the chamber had quieted. Never in the history of the Galactic Council have we encountered a species that so casually coexists with such a comprehensive array of toxins. I mean, we didn't have much choice, Jake said. Earth is kind of a hostile place if you think about it. Everything evolved defenses, plants made toxins, animals made venoms. We just had to adapt, figure out what we could eat and how to prepare it safely. We got good at it. Too good, muttered Counselor Exric. What does that mean? It means your species looked at a plant that produces cyanide and said, I bet we could eat that if we try hard enough, Exric said. That's not adaptation. That's spite. Maybe a little, Jake admitted. But in our defense, a lot of these toxic plants are really nutritious if you can get past the poison part. Cassava, for example, super high in carbohydrates, feeds millions of people. You just have to, prepare it right. Or die, Dromix added helpfully from the sidelines. Or die, Jake agreed. But mostly people don't die because we've been eating cassava for thousands of years, and we're good at it now. High Chancellor Vess's scales had settled into a resigned gray color. The Council needs to discuss this situation. However, I want to be clear about something, Mr. Torres. You came here today to take an entrance exam for the Von Sten Galactic Safety Academy, an academy designed to train safety inspectors who ensure compliance with toxicity standards across member worlds. Yes, sir. And you just demonstrated more knowledge of toxic substances than most of our senior inspectors. I just listed what was in my kitchen, sir. Exactly. Vess leaned forward on his podium. You didn't reference a database. You didn't look anything up. You simply wrote down, from memory, 47 poisons that you live with every single day. Jake wasn't sure if this was leading somewhere good or somewhere very, very bad. The question before this council, Vess continued, is whether your species represents a safety hazard to the galactic community, or whether you represent an unprecedented resource for understanding and managing hazardous materials. Can I vote for option 2? Jake asked. You may not. Vess's scales flickered with what might have been amusement. However, your exam results speak for themselves. Highest score in the Academy's history, pending council approval and the implementation of certain safety protocols regarding Earth and its products. Wait, I passed? You listed 47 poisons from memory and provided preparation notes, Krill said. Of course you passed. You terrified us, but you passed. There will be conditions, Vess warned. Earth's exports will require additional labeling. Human food preparation will need safety certification. And you, personally, will be subject to monitoring. How much monitoring? All of it, Dramix said. All of the monitoring. That seems excessive. You turned a grocery list into a threat assessment, Dramix said. We're being generous. High Chancellor Vess raised a hand, silencing the room. Before we conclude, Mr. Torres, is there anything else we should know about Earth's culinary practices? Jake thought about it. He really did try to think about whether there was anything else worth mentioning. Well, he said slowly, my grandmother has a garden. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What kind of garden? Vess asked carefully. Oh, tomatoes, peppers, some herbs, rhubarb, foxglove for the pretty flowers, oleander as a hedge, castor bean plants because she likes the leaves, daffodils in the spring, azaleas, wisteria on the arbor, lily of the valley along the path. With each plant name, another counselor's expression grew more horrified. Your grandmother, Counselor Thress burbled slowly, has cultivated a botanical weapons facility. She calls it a cottage garden. Does she know these plants are toxic? Oh, yeah. She's very careful about it. Wears gloves, washes her hands, doesn't eat anything straight from the garden without cooking it properly. She's been gardening for 50 years. Knows what she's doing. 50 years of handling toxins. She's really good at roses, too. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that has its own weight, its own presence in the room. Finally, High Chancellor Vess spoke. This council is adjourned. Emergency safety protocols for Earth and its inhabitants will be drafted immediately. Mr. Torres, you will report to Academy orientation next week. Congratulations on your acceptance. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Torres, do not tell anyone else about your grandmother's garden. Too late, Jake said. She has a blog. The sound of 17 species representatives experiencing simultaneous existential crisis was, Jake reflected, actually pretty impressive. The aftermath of what would later be known as the Kitchen Arsenal incident took approximately 6 standard galactic weeks to fully resolve. Jake spent most of that time in his assigned quarters on Kepler 9, watching the galactic news networks lose their collective minds. The headlines were spectacular. Earth declared hazardous territory, humans unfazed. Breaking: that chocolate you've been eating could kill you. Galactic Safety Council recommends hazmat certification for human restaurants. Local Quilaxian hospitalized after discovering coffee beans are neurotoxins. Had been drinking daily for 3 years. That last one had required a press release from the human embassy, clarifying that most species could consume small amounts of caffeine without incident. Most species. The Quilaxians, it turned out, were highly susceptible. There were lawsuits pending. Jake's exam had been filed under classified documentation, which seemed like overkill until Administrator Krill explained that 3 separate terrorist organizations had already tried to access it, assuming it was some kind of weapons manifest. When they discovered it was actually just a grocery list, 2 of the organizations had apparently disbanded out of sheer confusion. The third had sent Jake a recruitment offer, which he declined. The academy orientation was scheduled for week 7, but Jake received his official acceptance letter on week 4. It came with 17 pages of Fuzhou Winzen. Addendums, clarifications, legal disclaimers, and 1 handwritten note from High Chancellor Vess that simply read, "Please don't bring lunch from home." The formal policy changes were announced on week 5 during a full council session that was broadcast across all member worlds. Jake watched from his quarters, eating an apple. He was careful not to chew the seeds, mostly out of spite at this point. High Chancellor Vess stood at the central podium, his scales a diplomatic neutral blue. After extensive review and consultation with toxicology experts, cultural liaisons, and several traumatized safety inspectors, the Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding Earth and its inhabitants. The camera panned across the assembled representatives. They all looked like they'd aged considerably in the past few weeks. Counselor Thress had developed a new rippling pattern that their translator helpfully identified as stress-related. Effective immediately. Vess continued. Earth will be classified as a Category 4 biohazard zone. Jake nearly choked on his apple. Category 4 was the rating usually reserved for weapons development facilities and plague planets. This classification applies specifically to Earth's agricultural products and food preparation practices. All exports from Earth must now carry comprehensive warning labels in 73 languages, including chemical composition analysis and species-specific toxicity data. Human-operated food establishments in galactic space must obtain a Class 3 safety certification, and all staff must complete a hazardous materials handling course. On screen, the Vrelian counselor was sweating again. Some things never changed. Additionally, Vess said, and his scales flickered to something that might have been amusement. Humans working in food service or safety inspection roles will be granted automatic hazmat certifications, on the grounds that anyone who survived childhood on Earth has demonstrably mastered toxic material management. Jake's datapad pinged. A message from the Academy. Your hazmat certification has been approved. Level 5. Congratulations. Level 5. That was the highest civilian rating available. Jake had earned it by virtue of making it to age 23 without poisoning himself with his own dinner. The human known as Jake Torres, Vess continued, and Jake sat up straighter, has been accepted into the Galactic Safety Academy with full honors. His entrance examination, while unorthodox, demonstrated an exceptional understanding of toxicological principles and practical safety management. He will be placed on an accelerated track and assigned to the Hazardous Materials Response Division upon graduation. The camera cut to a split screen showing reactions from various worlds. Most were still processing. A few were applauding. One blowboyd news anchor was rippling in what looked like grudging respect. However, and Vess's scales darkened slightly. Mr. Torres will be subject to enhanced monitoring protocols. For everyone's safety, including his own. Jake's datapad pinged again, this time from Head Inspector Dramix. I've been assigned as your supervisor. This is your fault. All of this is your fault. A third message arrived, this one from Administrator Krill. Welcome to the Academy. Please review the attached list of prohibited items. It's mostly just your kitchen. The attachment was 47 pages long. On screen, Vess was wrapping up. The Council recognizes that Earth's unique evolutionary environment has produced a species with unusual resistance to toxic substances. Rather than viewing this as a threat, we choose to recognize it as a valuable trait for safety and hazard management roles. Humans will be eligible for positions that were previously considered too dangerous for most species. In other words, commented the blowboyd news anchor, they've weaponized their inability to die from breakfast and turned it into a career path. That's one way to put it, agreed their Zentari co-anchor. Jake's datapad was now pinging continuously. Messages from his family, Friends, former classmates, people he'd met once at a party 3 years ago. Everyone wanted to know if he'd really caused an interstellar incident over a test question. He opened the one from his grandmother first, saw the news, very proud. They mentioned my garden. I've had 17 interview requests. Also, someone from the Galactic Botanical Survey wants to visit. Should I be worried? Love. Gran. Jake typed back. Maybe don't show them the foxglove. Or the oleander. Or anything, actually. Love you. The formal announcement continued for another 20 minutes, covering new trade regulations, updated safety standards, and the creation of something called the Earth Food Monitoring Committee, which sounded exactly as bureaucratic as it was. Jake half listened while scrolling through increasingly panicked messages from various human food exporters, who were just now realizing they'd been casually selling toxins to aliens who didn't know they were toxic. There was going to be so much paperwork. Finally, Vess reached the conclusion. Let this serve as a reminder that the galaxy is vast and diverse. What is safe for one species may be lethal to another. What seems ordinary to one culture may seem extraordinary to others. The humans have reminded us that survival takes many forms, and sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is simply dinner. He paused, scales shifting to something almost like respect. Jake Torres passed his entrance exam by listing 47 poisons from his kitchen. In doing so, he achieved the highest score in Academy history and triggered a complete overhaul of galactic food safety protocols. This is either the most impressive or most concerning academic achievement we've ever witnessed. Possibly both. The council chamber erupted in applause. Thanks for watching. Confused, reluctant, slightly terrified applause, but applause nonetheless. Jake's datapad pinged one final time. A message from the Academy's Dean of Students. Orientation is next Monday. Building 7, Room 4, 12. Please don't bring snacks. Academy orientation turned out to be exactly as bureaucratic as Jake expected. There were forms. So many forms. There were safety briefings, which felt ironic given the circumstances. There were introductions to faculty members who looked at Jake like he might explode at any moment. And there was a moment, right at the end of the first day, when Administrator Krill pulled him aside in the hallway. You know, she said, two of her eyes on him while the other two scanned the corridor. When you listed 47 poisons on that exam, I thought you were trying to be difficult. I really wasn't, Jake said. I just answered the question. I know, that's what makes it remarkable. She handed him a datapad. This is your class schedule. You'll notice you're assigned to Advanced Toxicology, Hazmat Response, and Emergency Contamination Protocols. All graduate-level courses. I'm a first-year student. You're a human who survived to adulthood on Earth. You're overqualified for the standard curriculum. She paused. Also, we're creating a new course. Practical Poison Management. You're going to help teach it. I'm going to teach Academy students? You're going to teach them that sometimes the most important safety equipment is common sense and a healthy respect for what's in your pantry. Krill's mouths curved into what might have been a smile. Welcome to the Academy, Mr. Torres. Try not to cause any more interstellar incidents. No promises, Jake said. That's what I was afraid of. As Jake walked through the Academy halls toward his assigned quarters, he passed a bulletin board covered in student announcements. Someone had already posted a flyer, Human Safety Seminar, Learn What Not to Eat. Hosted by Jake Torres, the guy who weaponized breakfast. Below it, someone had added in handwriting, is he going to poison us? And below that, in different handwriting, only if we're not careful. Jake took a picture of it and sent it to his grandmother. Her response came back immediately. Proud of you, sweetie. The Botanical Survey people are coming next week. I'm making them tea. Should I mention the tea leaves are from the same family as the nightshades? Jake typed back. Gran. Please. That's not a no. It's absolutely a no. Too late. Already brewing. Somewhere in the Academy, Head Inspector Dramix's antennae probably just started twitching again. Jake smiled and kept walking. He had homework to do. Specifically, a 3,000-word essay on contamination protocols. He was pretty sure he could reference at least half of his grandmother's garden, for educational purposes only, of course.